Okay, recording is and has started. All right. Well, aloha mai kako. Welcome to one and all who is joining here and now and who may be watching this after the recording and this workshop. I want to welcome you all. 2022. What a wonderful start to the new year for many. And for others, they're experiencing some challenges. Yet, irrespective of where you are in terms of your experience, what we're going to be talking about today is the whole Resolve to Evolve, goal setting and getting in 2022. Now, from the get-go, I want to identify something. I don't actually use the word goals. I used to, when I was in my good old-fashioned personal trainer days, use that often. However, the etymology of the word itself actually talks about limits and it's a limitations. And so what we're going to be identifying through the course of today, I'm going to be speaking more along the lines of intentions and aspirations. However, you say that on the broader scale and it doesn't quite click for a lot of people as much as it does when you actually get a little bit more exposure to the word itself. Now, stick with me. This is a new platform, so I'm going to be playing with it and we'll be learning together. So I'm going to open up this screen share. One moment. Okay, that looks like it's going perfect. I'm going to move this screen out of the way. And we're going to be in primarily the presentation for the rest of the workshop. Now, with that then is going to be, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask, put your question or comment in the chat box, and then I'll be checking that periodically throughout the course of the presentation itself, and then also at the very, very end. And so if you have questions as we go through, by all means, type it into the chat box, then I will be able to look at that afterwards and do a little bit more in terms of supporting with answering those questions. All right, so here we are. Resolve to evolve. And so the whole concept of this is really to look at, rather than setting resolutions, which are one of the first things we get into after the holiday hustle, right? October comes and Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we get into the New Year's, and then it's like January 2nd, we're on it. Kind of take the first off here in Hawaii, at least. And January 2nd, we're in it. And so we set these resolutions and these goals. And out of the 100 people who set these resolutions and goals, by the end of that same year, December 31st, 2000, whenever, they have effectively only seen 4 people. 96 of those 100 people have dropped off or out of their goal. And so one of the things that we're going to be looking at is really this whole concept around resolutions and really again, etymology, the source of the word resolve, which is more a matter of dissolving, like dissolving into a process. And I feel like that's a much more appropriate way to use this, because as we talk about all of the tools, technologies, and techniques today, there is a larger process that is unfolding. And that process of effectively our personal awakening can be uh, pretty interesting, which I'll do another actually presentation on later. Yet that's really what we're getting into. And so as we go through all of this today, one of the things that I really want to encourage is, kind of lightening up on this whole concept of resolutions. Now, to kind of set the stage, I'd like to just talk about, first and foremost, who this guy? All right, so who the heck am I? So my name is Michael Keolamau Tengan, and I go by Keolamau more often than not. It's a Hawaiian name that I've taken some time to grow into, and yet it's something that not just for my company, yet also for myself personally is very meaningful. And so I've been in the last, 20 plus years, have been really navigating these aspects of personal change and transformation. And so what started off personally with my own awakenings, if you will, and then went into professionally through personal training, and then also going into like corporate wellness consultation and community health advocacy, fatherhood. All of these things are aspects that have really, for me, who's always had a very curious mind, has spurred more questions. And so this is the culmination of everything from good practices that come from those periods of more specifically areas of personal training and specificity with those goals, as well as how that works in a broader, bigger picture related to what I call the four body system. And the four body system is our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual selves, which are going to be all things that we attend to throughout the course of this workshop today. Now, before driving or diving really too deeply into our agenda, I invite all those who are listening right now to just take a moment to close your eyes and just breathe. It's funny. We all too often are so focused outside of ourselves, our jobs, traffic, children, cooking, reports, whatever it is that we do in our everyday lives, that we forget to breathe. And it's through breath that we can actually do so many things for this four body system. So as you breathe, I want you just to slow your breath just by about half its normal rate. And just take note of where you're breathing into. Is it your chest? Is it your abdomen? If in your chest, is it your upper chest or lower? Just becoming more aware, connected, and attentive of your own personal pattern of breath. Just knowing that with each and every breath out, that you release any stress, any tension that you may have and that may have a hold on you. With each and every breath in, reclaiming your own energy and attention, bringing it now into the totality of this moment. And now breathe out, allowing all air to expire from your lungs. Breathing in slowly, deeply, fully, holding this breath just for a moment. Exhale, heavy with a sigh. Just allowing all of that to go. As now we allow this workshop to flow. When you feel ready, please feel free to again open your eyes, and here we are. So, one of the things I invite you to do as we look at this, our agenda for the day, is to just set an intention for yourself. What is it that you want to experience here now? If it's a matter of learning, is it a matter of just, being able to open your mind to new tools and opportunities, whatever that is, right now, just for a moment, set your intention. Because our agenda today is going to dive deeply into a lot of these different points that we see here. And this really is going to be the steady flow in terms of reflection, introspection, aspirations, visualization, vision craft, resonance, balance, coherence, rhythm, causation, allowing, and embodiment. And there's actually an 11.5, which we'll talk about when we get past point number 11. However, with that intention set, buckle up because here we go. Okay, we can only see from how we perceive. Now, what this means is often we engage the world around us by the lenses, if you will, um, that we hold with the world within. So I've got my trusty blue light lenses, which I just realized I'm not wearing. That's right. Um, and so when I look at the screen, for example, through this lens, it filters out a frequency of light, right? And same thing if you are wearing your Ray-Bans or your Maui Jims or what have you outside, right? It filters out a certain type of light. And so we're able to see things in a certain way. Now, when we talk about how we see, this is how we're looking upon the world around us and often ourselves, yet how we perceive comes from a very particular place. In fact, the life that we live, that we identify as we're seeing, is often a result of the actions that we've taken. Now, these actions that we have taken often are coming from a place in terms of the thoughts that we have. The most dominant thoughts manifest from a place of our beliefs. Our beliefs come from a place of our values and our emotions often come from experience, personal experience that often has happened early in childhood that gets reinforced again and again and again in adulthood. So we have a dynamic that plays out. Our conscious mind can want something, and our subconscious mind might call bullshit on us. And so when that happens, that's one of the first areas that we really see some tension in terms of our not goal, our aspirations and our intentions. Because there's sometimes a difference between what it is that we want consciously and what it is that we feel that we deserve subconsciously. And we're going to talk a lot about that dynamic in terms of the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and introducing this whole concept of the superconscious mind as well. All right, technique number one. So I said we're going to do over a dozen techniques, and we're going to keep this very much technique based. And so, technique number one is reflection. So, again, holiday hustle, right? We going through October, November, December, straight into January, and there is this pace, this velocity that we keep. And that pace and velocity that we keep is pretty fast. Now, the thing about that is that when we look at nature, right here in Hawaii right now, we're in our rainy season, right? And so we look at the winter solstice. That's the less amount of light that we have, most amount of darkness. When you think about that whole concept of light and dark, right, there's a part that's more external, more internal. And so, in the midst of this, our beautiful Gregorian calendar, we have a period which really, if we kind of just look at nature itself, is a much more reflective period in life. However, a lot of our tension comes out. And so we go through the holiday hustle and then we come into January and there's almost this pressure like, oh shit, I didn't even think about what I'm supposed to be doing in 2022. Well, I think I'll just do this, this, and this. This is where I like to invite people just to pause before you proceed. Because when we get into that whole flow of go, 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 we also want to acknowledge that it's a dance, you know? It's a time to pause. I salsa dance, and so it's an 8-step dance, and you go 1, 2, 3 are the first 3 steps. Pause just for a moment. That's the 4 count. 5, 6, 7. Pause on the 8. And so there's a pause, and that's a natural part of it. And so one of the things that we want to do right now, and we're going to do a shortened version of it. I invite you to do this in its entirety on your own is an activity. And we're going to look at the 3 major challenges of 2022. And in the interest of time, we're actually just going to look at the major challenge that you experienced in 2022. Now, to clarify, this can be something that is ongoing. It could be anything from maybe money was tight. So perhaps that would be a challenge. Perhaps there was some friction in relationship. Perhaps that could be a challenge. So right now, just for a moment, just kind of think. 2021, rather, what was the major challenge that you had faced through the course of that year? Now, once that's identified, and so I'll use one for me, we'll just say scarcity. Next thing we're going to do is attach a word that best describes what that challenge was. Single word. And I'll talk about this in our next slide. Single word that best describes what that is. So kind of think about that, feel into it. What word best describes the major challenge that you experienced in 2021? So I will use just as an example, scarcity and finance. Lots of things happened last year. All over the place. Yet one of the things that happened was that I stepped out of the business that I had co-founded and created. And so all of a sudden found myself in a very open space and not necessarily where I'd want to be financially, though it was one of the things that was an opportunity for me to learn. So these challenges often come from a place, it's internal, things happen inside of us, and then things then happen around us. And so for me, one of the things that came up in terms of scarcity of finance was just, a matter of personal worthiness. And so that was a big theme for me. Now, as we go through that, and on your own, you're able to just use like a journal, and I would just write it out and then identify what those three challenges are. We're going to transmute it because deep in the heart of winter, not only is it very reflective, it's also very introspective. So now, what we want to do is take that single word that you have, and that's going to be your word of challenge, right? For me, scarcity is my word of challenge. And we're going to change it into its opposite. Let's say it's a sliding scale. On one side, there is scarcity, for example. On the other side, for me, the word wealth is what makes sense. It feels right. Now, as I look at that, then, this sliding scale of what my challenge was, I want to change it into a theme for 2022 of what my triumph will be. Now, one of the things about that is we want to make it real. We want to make it kind of raw. It, kind of makes us feel a little uncomfortable. And we also want to make it relevant. So one of the first things that we want to do is to not just brainstorm it or mind flow with it. We also want to clarify. So one of the first tools we're going to be looking at is what's called muscle testing. Now, muscle testing is a great way that allows our body and the intuitive and intelligence of the body to tell us what's what. Now, I'll update this. So all of the things that we're going in through right now is also part of a 12-week program that starts next week. If you want to find out more about this stuff, then I'll be talking about it then. However, for now, what you want to do is take your dominant hand. So my dominant hand is my right hand. And this is going to be your anchor. Okay, this is your anchor. Take your non-dominant hand and link that. Okay. Now, what we're going to see and do is basically, let me go first, is we'll calibrate, show me a yes, and you attempt to pull your fingers apart, show me a no. Now, the entire time, I consciously am squeezing the dickens. I don't know where that even comes from, dickens. Squeezing the dickens out of my fingertips and holding them together as best as I can. Conscious, subconscious, there's a difference. Now, show me a yes, show me a no. Okay? So now what we have is a way to clarify what is true, what is false, what is strong, what is weak, because our muscles will respond in this principle of absolute, basically yes and no. It's very binary. Okay. And so what we want to do then is once we have our three words of challenge, which we tend to feel, we can feel that right here, then we want to get the best word of triumph. And so in this case, for me, wealth. So I'm going to test that with my fingers together. I've already calibrated. So you want to start off once you do that by calibrating. And let's actually do it together real fast. Show me a yes, pull apart. Show me a no, pull apart. Do it again. Show me a yes, pull apart. Show me a no, pull apart. Okay, we're calibrated. Now you can say something to the effect of, in my highest and best interest and for the greatest good, is it in my best interest to use the word, for me, it's wealth, for 2022? Yes. Is it in my highest and best interest and for the greatest good to use the word abundance for 2022? Is it in my highest and best interest and for the greatest good to use the word affluence for 2022? Okay, so I've tested 3 different words using muscle testing, which really has such high utility for everything we're talking about today. And what's come out is wealth. So now, introspection, take a moment. What really does have the greatest power and capacity to support me in moving into my triumphs based upon my challenges? Well, once we've got that, hopefully you've got your word now, we move into our aspirations, all right? And so one of the things that I like to point out is that only by knowing where we've been can we truly align with where we are going. So way back when, there was lots of people, well, not lots of people, there were 2 different groups of people within the Polynesian Triangle that voyaged to Hawaii, right? People from the Marquesas Islands, people from Tahiti. Now, they needed to know where they were starting off at. to be able to know where they were going because they were using the star maps, the constellations to go from point A to point B. Right now, we're at a point A. This is where we're starting. To figure out where point B is, we also want to be able to give our intentions a landing spot. And so, what is it that we really and truly desire, right? When I think about the word wealth, it is more than a matter of money, right? If we look at the etymology of that word, it comes from a place of well-being. So I like to think of it as vitality. Like I have everything, not just everything that I want and need to really thrive in life, that I'm doing, I'm experiencing these in a way that is healthy, right? Because I could work my tail off to get and provide all this money, and I could be sacrificing my soul to do that. However, when we talk about vitality, it's something that is fulfilling, that is something almost magical, and is something that we can be handsomely compensated for. So, as we look at that, then wealth, right? One of the things that I invite you to do is to do a simple journal exercise that checks in with your B's, your do's, and your wants. And this is going to be, or halves rather, 10 halves, 5 do's, and 3 B's. I would say the way to do it is to frame your B's around our 3 words of triumph, right? And so I would say, for example, one of my B's could be around wealth. And it could be something like I live a life of wealth and prosperity, generically throwing that out there. So then, what does that look like in terms of a do? What are the actions that really speak to that? Perhaps for me, it could be a matter of travel. You know, when I have in this place of wealth, one of the things that I am able to do and capable of doing and wanting to do is to travel. So perhaps one of my do's is to travel to Europe in the summer of 2022. Okay, so you see that we have those 3 B's. Then we can create the actions that are in alignment with those B's and perhaps a haves. So I'm looking at getting a new car this year. And so perhaps a have could be something like I have I'm looking at the 2 different cars. I'll go with the Jeep Gladiator. I have a Jeep Gladiator, and I could get as specific as I want with that in terms of the color, so on and so forth. Um, and that would be a have, yet it could also be something less tangible. I have a deep sense of self and connection, which could also be under the umbrella of wealth with myself and those that I love. So, what we want to do is be able to flush out those 3 words of triumph, use them as the base for our 3 B's, and from our B's, then be able to create the do's and our haves in terms of the aspirations that we're looking at for this year. Now, at any point, you can muscle test any of this, by the way. All right, so we got our aspirations. And again, this is simple enough to do with a journal. I would highly recommend having a journal for yourself that you can keep all of this all together in. All right, I am that which I am. So that first part really is very reflective and internal. We get really clear and connected to what it is that we want. In this next section, we're going to go over a few different techniques that will allow us to put ourselves in a better place of alignment. One of which is visualization. Now, this is actually, I use visualization as a generic terminology. Each and every one of us has our own intuitive talents. So, for example, some of us can be more visual, and this could be more of our psychic abilities. Others can be much more, deeply more feelers. We feel into things, and perhaps then a visualization, not as much as perhaps a sensation might be more appropriate. Some of us are more physical, our intuition really works well within our body, so we actually need to go out and do something. And others are just more what I call energetic, and that's being able to kind of tap into all of those, yet there's also a different sensation to it. However, for all intent and purposes, technique number 4, we're going to go into a strict visualization that you can feel free to adapt to in any shape and form. So if you can see it, you can be it. Often, when we look at all of the things in the world, these ideas, these innovations, and creativity, I'm a firm believer that everything is, that was, and that will be already is in existence. It's just up here in the cloud, right? Whether we're talking about Einstein's theory of relativity, at that time, there are a number of different people who are looking at this concept of a quantum reality, for example, or Edison and the light bulb. There's a lot of people who are looking at harnessing electricity, right? These ideas were out there. And so as we look at that, then, if we are able to access that information, that means that is something that is absolutely for us to experience if we want to. So what we're going to do now is a real brief visualization. And I invite you to take that word, whatever that word is for you, your word of triumph to clarify, and just take a moment with that because we want to create a deep and rich sensory experience. And as we do, we're going to allow our mind just to immerse in that. So have that word, okay, ready. And in a relaxed position, go ahead and just close your eyes. With your eyes now closed, we're going to drop back into that same breath that we started off with, focusing our attention within our chest. Just breathing naturally and just allowing ourselves to check in with where our breath is within inside of ourselves. And as we breathe down within our chest, within our heart center, bring to heart the word that you are intending. Quietly within inside of yourself and deep within inside of your chest, just quietly repeat that 3 times. Beautiful. Feel it almost as it warms within inside of you, as it almost expands. Just be present with the sensations that come up with that. Now, on your next breath in, I want you to bring that energy from your chest all the way up, smack dab, into the middle of your head, from heart to head. Feel it as it comes up, pauses where your third eye or pineal gland exists, basically between your brow and about an inch and a half in. And now, with that frequency of the word of triumph, imagine, if you will, within your mind's eye, a screen, very much like a movie screen in front of you. And now start to see images start to appear and know that what's appearing is the fulfillment of this word. We're already there. This word, its experience, its resonance has already happened. I am living my life of wealth. And now start to notice as things just spontaneously appear, images, places, people, and just behold for a moment what it is that you see before you, what it is that you hear, any sounds that are becoming more audible, what it is that you smell. And as you allow yourself merely to immerse in this moment, allow yourself to also feel the emotions, the joy, the excitement, the happiness of the fulfillment of this perfect moment. Now it's time to release this. Breathe out, allowing all air to expire from your lungs. Again, breathe in slowly, deeply, fully holding your breath. And this moment, as you breathe out heavy with a sigh, releasing all of it. Breath, allowing this perfect moment now to be free to unfold on your behalf. And when you feel ready, please feel free to again open your eyes. All right. How was that for you? Hopefully you're able to experience it. And if you have any questions on this by all means, put it into the chat or feel free to follow up with me directly afterwards. That perfect moment, though, it's really interesting to see because what we start to acknowledge is that our mind is a neural network, that it is actually this bioelectrical system that we can signal what's happening directly in front of us, as well as creating a new reality. And effectively, that's what we're doing. Lots of great information on this. Dr. Joe Dispenza goes into it, as well as others. However, this really has a sensation, and when I do it, I feel it in my body. Like I just feel happy, I feel excited, and I love that sensation. And so, as we create this within the realm of the mind, it's something that can absolutely become our reality. Yet we have to be able to see it. And often we say, see it, if I see it, then I believe it. However, it's more a matter in this case of when I believe it, then I will see it. Speaking of which, technique number 5. So, vision craft. What we want to do now that we've got our words, right? We've got our 3 words of triumph. Now we've also got then our be's, our do's, and our haves. We've gone into our visualization. We've created that perfect moment, and it is beautiful. Is we want to anchor that. Now, one way you can do it is by using things like a vision board. So the boys and I, this is our old one, though it's going all the way until March. So you can see they drew a picture. We cut out things from magazines. We did a whole art afternoon activity with it. And I ended up just using a box from the mail office, or the post office rather. And then I just went through, and these are the words from last year, the words that we're looking at and intending. And so you can make something as fun, which if you're artsy fartsy, and actually, especially if you're not, this is a great activity. Helps to shift the mind from left into right hemisphere. This is a great way to do it. Mind movies. So I've also done things where I take pictures and I'll do a presentation like this, and I'll have some background music into it as well, which we'll talk about the importance of music on our next slide. And I'll just have it going and it flows and I'll watch it. It's usually like 3 to 5 minutes and it'll go through all of these images which uplift and inspire. You can do things as simple as in this case with this image here is like a scrapbook journal, which you can also do. Picture is very similar to a vision board, though the advantage of this is you can have that all in the same journal. You can write things down as well, keeping with and acknowledging a lot of the wins that you have. And then also screensavers. Like I have a screensaver on my picture because one of my core pieces is, and always comes back to the boys. So I got a picture of the boys there, yet I also have other things as well. Now, what this does is this helps to anchor, right, this realm, this reality into our physical world. So every day I walk out and the vision board is right by the kitchen. I pause, I look at it, I take a moment, and I continue on my day. All right, so music is really pretty key. When we talk about resonance, again, back to our filters, if you will, our emotions and our beliefs. One of the things that we can look at is the old classic phrase of what you see. And if you said is what you get, there is another phrase that goes by what you see depends upon where you stand. So, for example, right, we could all be standing in a park at different locations, and there could be something that happens. And as this something happens, we will all see it differently because we're standing at a different point. So our perception is affected and influenced by our perspective, right? And so where it could be something where, well, perhaps someone sees it as an altercation, that something had happened, like there's a fight. Others might see it as two friends playing. Others might see it as potentially like, I don't know, a play or acting thing in the park. However, what ends up happening is that as we set these intentions, inevitably our subconscious has something to say about it, right? We can consciously set our intention and our subconscious may call bullshit. So one of the things that we can do, because this is one of those areas that we don't often talk about as much with anything around intention setting, is that our subconscious may not feel worthy of it, right? And so it tends to spur, and this is a lot of where that 96% of people who don't see their goals fulfilled comes into play, is that it can drum up a lot of things, feelings that we have, ways that we see, things that we believe about ourselves. Now, in resonance, and this kind of comes then back to the whole concept of the law of attraction, is we want to keep ourselves as much as possible acknowledging those parts that come up, which we'll talk about next in terms of our emotional experience. However, we want to keep ourselves uplifted because it's in those higher arenas of frequency that this stuff comes back more easily. And so, one great thing to do is to create a playlist. Now, there's, our jams. I'm a 79 guy, so I was listening to, who was it now? Montel Jordan. This is how we do it. All hands in the air, right? And so that's the song I enjoy hearing. It is uplifting and doesn't necessarily have the resonance that I need to be able to work through my own healing. Now, what that means is that every musical chord, if you look at the musical chords, we have seven, right? And there are different hertz frequencies to each. So, what I'm going to recommend is what's typically thought of as an A chord, and that's going to be at 432 hertz. Now, 432 hertz is incredibly interesting because that's focused here within the heart center. It's all about self-love. And as we put it on, even though we may not consciously be aware of it, subconsciously, we are attuning. And when I say attune to tune, it's like if you ever see an orchestra, right? An orchestra comes in and there is a note that everyone is tuning to, and they'll tune up, they'll tune down. However, we are tuning up to this resonance of 432 hertz when we allow ourselves to listen to it. So whether we got, our headsets or we got our speakers, we're in the car, when we have a playlist, particularly if we can get songs that we already enjoy with lyrics that are uplifting, that are at 432 hertz, then that is the trifecta of good vibrations, as Marky Mark would say. Told you, 79, man. Um, so what we want to do is create our playlist. Now, the great thing about this is there are both apps as well as programs that can translate whatever songs you have, say it's in like a G or an F, and actually tune it to an A. And so if there are already songs that you know out there, then terrific. And you can also then change the songs that you do like and find already uplifting into an A, so it'll have that resonance. Yeah, when you play that, because there are going to be times when things come up, right? Days are hard. We face these different challenges. However, we want to keep ourselves, as we process through all of this, get ourselves back into that uplifted state, because then things just come back more quickly. So, resonance, the activity on this is creating a playlist, specifically things in the chord of A and at 432 hertz. Because we look at technique number 7, balance. So our 4-body system, as we talked about, right? Our physical body, our mental body, emotional body, and spiritual body, if you will. This is all about the emotional body. And this really dives in, which can be a whole workshop in and of itself, on the dynamic, again, spectrum of what it is that we deserve. And what we deserve often is a matter of past experience. Often it's a matter of trauma, of worthiness. And so perhaps I, for whatever in my life, have felt that I deserved to settle. I deserved not to be heard. I deserved not to be paid a certain amount. I deserved whatever that story is. Now, on the opposite end is what we are deserving of. And that's vastly different. This is what we really started off our whole day with, right? The words of challenge, the words of triumph. Yet we can say consciously, I am deserving of all the beauty, wonder, and grace in the world. And we may call bullshit on ourselves. And so this really addresses that. How does the emotional body store all of this, and how can we release it? So for those who know that, I'm big into rolling. And this isn't foam rolling. It uses that process, yet has much firmer roller that gets in much more deeply and can actually go into the process of release. Because in our fascia, which is now an organ, wasn't before, it's more than just connective tissue. There's a lot to this as well, which I'll be talking about this Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the relaxation response. However, we are a product of our conditioning, and that has lots of meanings. However, our body holds a certain condition, and it's held within our fascia. These little interoceptors, which basically are associated with our memory cortex. And so when we actually roll, we're not just increasing circulation, we're not just releasing tension and knots. We are actually also unlocking past experiences held within our body. Okay, so check in right now. Go ahead and just close your eyes. Again, we drop back into that same breathing pattern, our coherence breathing pattern. And now bring to heart that word again, your word of triumph. And now as you become aware of that word of triumph, slowly just allow that to resonate for a bit with inside of yourself and just bit by bit check in with your body. Where is there any tension? Where is there any tightness? For myself, for example, wealth, I feel tightness in my right shoulder. Okay. Wealth, I feel a tightness in the right part of my neck. And with wealth, I feel just a little uneasiness in my stomach. Okay, and then go ahead and open your eyes again. Now, our body holds all kinds of stuff and can hold areas of emotional blockages and more of this somatic stress. And so, with the relaxation response, which I'll talk about more in the next few weeks during the class, it holds a memory which often is inconsistent with our intention. And so what we can do though, through breath work, starting to recondition the nervous system, right? Through rolling, releasing a lot of that tension, and then actually going in through some mobility to create more circulation, we can actually start to reinforce everything that we've just done so far. Because what happens for most and many, that 96%, is this is where things get stuck. This is why people end up not seeing their aspirations through. This is why our own feeling of worthiness, of deserving, is what often inhibits this whole process. So balance in the body is key. Which leads us into coherence. So again, our life is usually the culmination of our actions and inactions, which comes from our thoughts, which are manifestations of our beliefs, which comes from a place of our values, which comes in from our emotions, born of experience. And so as we look at that, that's like, well, damn, that's a lot. Yes, it is. And one of the ways that we can really start to go in from where we just were with the emotional body into the mental body is being able to better ride the brain wave frequencies, if you will, and looking at how we can actually start to bring them into not just a better place of inner balance, also coherence. And so I kind of think of this as my inner relationship with myself. On the left-hand side, you see the black and white, which often is the role of the left hemisphere. You see all the calculations and the geometry and equations. On the right-hand side, it's like someone just splattered paint all over the place, right? But the right-hand side, just much more open and creative and imaginative, right? Really good with just the pure potentiality of all things. Left-hand side is really good. This is the box that we talk about, right? When we talk about ego, a lot of it comes from here. It is the way that we self-identify and then also identify the world and categorize the world around us. So one side, the left side, black and white, is more of the masculine. Right-hand side is more of the feminine. And in any relationship, there are times when, we're just having fun. We're laughing and we're enjoying. And then, time just kind of melts away. We get into this like timeless space because it's just so freaking awesome. And there are other times when it's not. It's more like rubbing two sticks together to start a fire, right? There's friction that comes into play. So coherence is being able to bring ourselves into a more internally balanced on one side and state of communication between our left and our right hemisphere. Because when this happens, it opens a passage for less stress, for more enjoyment, more fun, more creativity, all of these things. Now, the exercise, coherence breathing, is what we've been doing all day. Eyes closed, breathe into your chest, lower your breath by half that rate, and just allow yourself to keep your awareness here, which is great because you can do it for as little as 2 minutes. You can do it for as long as 10. The longer that you do it, the more that your body is able to get into it, which is great because then we can recondition our body. So, coherence breathing is key, and we can do it periodically throughout the day. In fact, my day every morning starts off with, well, after I get out of bed. I'll go into the bed part in just a moment. However, when I'm out of bed, my day starts off with coherence breathing. This is going straight into that bed piece. So, rhythm, technique number 9. We talk about these rhythms, and we have these macro and micro rhythms. Macro being more being, natural world around us, micro being more internal. So, as you can see here, there's the rotation in terms of the seasons. We're in winter, right? And so very deep, internal, introspective, and reflective. And we're going to go then into spring. Now, as we get into spring, it's great because that really is a great opportunity to start to see things bud. So, for example, my business, kyolamal.com, I'm doing a couple of things here and there this month, obviously, this workshop. And come March, man, it's going to be firing on all cylinders because there is a rhythm that I'm aligning with, which makes things a little bit easier. So spring goes into that, starting new projects. Summer goes into like the peak of light, right? With the summer solstice. And so there's all of this energy that's going to be poured in. And then as we come into the fall, then it's backing off a little bit. Winter back in internal, spring back into the motion. And so this cycle is great, and it works on a daily cycle as well. So I said first thing that I do was coherence breathing. Not necessarily true. When I wake up, one of the first thing that I do after actually getting up is I have my eyes closed and I take a moment. And as we were looking at the brainwave frequencies, I'm going to go back just a bit. Beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Um, Beta generally is thinking and overthinking and anxiety, which most people spend most of the day in. Alpha is that balanced state that we're talking about, is that coherent state. Left hemisphere, right hemisphere in a good place and communicating. Theta is like deep sleep. It is or deep meditation, light sleep, and is also the state that when you arrive at home after driving for 45 minutes in traffic and you're like, oh crap, I don't even remember the last 45 minutes. That's theta. You're on autopilot. That's subconscious mind doing its thing. Delta is usually when you fall asleep and you just wake up and you're almost a little disoriented because you don't know what time it is, where you are. That's deep delta when you bypass any dream state and just into that deep state. Now, that's relevant because when we're in sleep, we're generally coming out of theta. Now, theta, if we look at everything from hypnosis to self-suggestion, is a period that we tend to be the most susceptible. So as I come out, I wake up and I start to come out even before I open my eyes. I'm like, okay, I'm awake. I'll pause in that theta area and I will say to myself, why is it true? Now, this is terrific. You can do it first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And it is something that is really helpful because what it does is it inserts, right, seeds of intention into my subconscious mind. And so I will say everything from why is it true that I am able to express myself in a healthy and comfortable way, enriching and enhancing my own relationship to, and you don't need to do it this long, this is just something that I say, enriching and enhancing my relationship to myself and those around me. It could be something like, why is it true that I am fulfilling my calling and have made a career and am handsomely compensated for it? We're framing things as an inquiry. We're asking a question. because the subconscious mind does really good with questions. It will endeavor to answer that. So when I ask a question like that in relationship to my calling and my career, my subconscious mind is, oh, that's a good question. Let's figure it out. And so starts to rearrange things internally, which I don't even need to do. You know, my own deserving and worthiness, there are things that we can do, and there are things that are being done. And so I effectively delegate to my subconscious mind to, hey, man, figure this out. And so it goes through the process of reorganization and reorientation. And as that comes into play with reconditioning the body and releasing those blockages of emotion, as that comes in by giving our intention a landing point, which is our visualization, all of these things start to come together, right? We are unlocking and really from that emerging from this place. And so why is it true? Something as simple as that. Last thing you do before you go to sleep, so you give your subconscious mind in that deep restful state things to process first thing in the moment, so that sets context for the day. All right, hopefully we're all still okay. We're almost through it. What most matters most. So again, thoughts from beliefs, thoughts into actions, and here's our life. So what this means to look at is the whole concept of materialization and how we can actually change our thought processes to create new actions and to reinforce from these actions new thought processes. So it goes both ways. Matters in a matter of becoming matter. All right, technique number 10, causation. All right. Everyday actions, extraordinary results. So one of the things that I found is that often we can look at an intention and be like, well, where do I even start? Right? And once we get into that, we go into that left hemisphere. Left hemisphere likes fixed information. It's actually really good with just data that is known. However, there's a whole freaking world of things that we don't know, right? And so we actually want to be, when we're getting into this state, in our right hemisphere. And so a great exercise to do, an activity, is what I call mind flow. So we use that coherence breathing, eyes closed, breath into chest, so on and so forth, to drop into that more intuitive state, let's say. And we get into that place. And when we feel ready, just kind of asking ourselves a question, well, what are the actions that can best fulfill this intention of wealth, for example? Okay, sitting in that, feeling it, letting it kind of stir here, even stir a little bit lower, dependent upon, that's more of an advanced technique. Open your eyes, and then you're going to want to have a couple of things. A whole big stack of sticky notes and a trusted pen, because you're going to be writing some stuff. I would say setting a timer for 5 minutes and then just starting to write. Write an idea, take that sticky note, put it onto the wall. Write it, get an idea, sticky note, put it on the wall. And then when I've done it, which is a few times, the entire wall is plastered with sticky notes. And I find that for me, it's best because I'm able to just get all this stuff out, and I'm able then to reorganize things. Because one of the things that happens is this is not all the things that I have to do that I'm looking at. These are all the things that need to be done that I feel in this moment. And that could be everything when I was doing this for my webpage, right? I was looking at my brand. What are the things that I want to do, which is an entirely another presentation going into calling and career. However, I listed everything out, and that was everything from brand identity to building programs to logo design. Like everything came out. I actually extended past the 5 minutes and then extended for another 5 minutes. So it was like 10 minutes of stuff I was writing. Got it all out, put it up onto the wall. And then as I'm looking at it now on the wall, all of these things, I'm like, well, shit, that's a lot of stuff to do. Okay, I don't need to do all of it. Right? I don't need to be the one to do all of it. So what is it that I want to focus upon? And we'll get into that in our next part. But flush all of that information out, because there are things that absolutely have to be done by you, by me. And there is a whole litany of things that we don't even need to bother with. That's where allowing comes in. And honestly, for a lot of people, this is a little tricky. Whether we're talking about asking for help or connecting with a mentor or what have you, this part is a little more tricky. I'd say definitely with guys, more so with guys than with women. However, when we get that all of that information out, right? I know what it is that I want to focus upon, at least generally, then that also necessitates other people being a part of that process. And so I kind of think of it like paddling a canoe. I used to paddle back in the day. And as we paddle, we get into a rhythm. Now, when the right people are in the boat, there's, a connection, an alignment. There is a synergy that exists. It's called the glide, where we're paddling the boat. However, it almost feels like it's popping out of the water and it's just like a rock skimming on the surface of the water itself. And that's the kind of feel that we want to have, right? And so in that line, we've got then the steersman. And in this case, for example, as a personal trainer back in that day, that was something that people would hire me on for, would to help in terms of the facilitation of the fulfillment of that intention. Also, those teaching how to use machines, or how do I balance my nutrition, or just strict accountability. Yet there's inevitably, especially as we go into new aspects, having a coach or a mentor is something that's great. Just as important is surrounding yourself with people that will help with that. So, say for example, if it's like an intention of releasing 10 pounds in, the first half of 2022. And say, for example, all of my friends go out and drink every Friday and Saturday night. And, we get the poke, we get the spam musabis. I mean, we eat crap, right? Well, poke, not so much. Anyways, we're drinking heavily and we're eating crap Friday and Saturday night. This probably is not a social support network that is going to, get me, or rather uplift me to a place that is consistent with the intention that I've set. And so it's then looking at, well, perhaps other friends who are more invested. Who are the friends that like to go hiking on Saturday and Sundays? Who are the friends that, I don't know, like to do trivia games instead of going to the bar or what have you? We want to surround ourselves with people who can really offer us a network of support in this line. These pods, if you will, are something that really allows us to be much more intentional. And particularly as we're talking about these aspirations, that intentionality is huge. Now, we're also talking about it not just as support, but also fulfillment. And that fulfillment piece, right? Back to our wall, sticky notes everywhere. We've got what we want to focus upon, and then there's all the rest. 11.5 is a matter of doing inventory. So it's looking at generally what's draining and what's uplifting. For example, as I had my wall, anything related to finance, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. That is draining for me. I'd rather just not. And so then I will take that, even though initially I had it as part of the things that I would want, or rather feel that I should focus upon. I put that into the other category. And so as you get all of this out, generally when we have that list of things for ourselves and then the list of others, one of the ways that I would advise you to look at it is what is uplifting? What is renewing? What are the things that really makes your soul sing? Everything else put into that other category. Now, as you look at that, then one of the things that you can be really true with yourself about is, well, who do I know then that can help with all this other stuff? Which would take us back into this allowing, asking for help and asking the right people, back to the glide, someone that we feel connected to, someone that we trust, someone that is willing to help. And as we look at that, then that really enables, after we do this inventory, about what that looks like. So, real briefly, we're just going to do a real quick exercise with your journal. Okay, so go ahead and get your journal and your pen. And we're just going to do 30 seconds, super fast. What I want you to do is come back to your word, right? For me, it's wealth. And so, what are all of the things that you feel need to happen, that would be good to happen, to really fulfill this for you? And we're doing it really broadly. However, what's the word? And then, real quickly, mind flow, get everything out that you can. 30 seconds of all the things that you feel need to happen to fulfill this. Ready and begin. Just writing down anything that you feel needs to happen to fulfill your intention. Okay, 15 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, whether you have one item or you have 20, real briefly, look at your list and circle whatever feels uplifting. Okay, just go ahead and circle whatever feels uplifting, because these are the things that you are not just best able to do, it is also something that is rewarding just for having done it. And this is where you want to start off in terms of getting into some of the actions. Because when we get into technique number 12, we start to get into embodiment, right? We start to get into all of these things that we're talking about, from our bees, our do's, and our haves, the visualization, being able to work through unlocking some of those emotional blockages, and then in their place, have these other qualities and characteristics, because that just naturally happens. Things start to emerge. Now, embodiment means that we are being this version of our vision now. And as we do that, being the change, if you will, one of the things to look at is, as we look at this, all the things we've talked about can seem like a lot. The beauty of it is that as long as we are managing a 4% ish, and that's relatively low, doesn't have to be exact yet, as long as we're managing about a 4% rate of change every week, we're in a good space, because then we can start to see results. And so one of the things that I encourage is, say, for example, so with our children, years back, was told that I could not have children, that I was not completely sterile, but the probability of having a child was so astronomically um, negative that there really was, at least when presented, this is April 2014, that there was really no other option except for the different treatments. So I said, okay, thanks, and went into actually a lot of that, what we've done today. And I would go through the process of reinforcing something different. And one of the things that I would reinforce, and this is one of the activities, is reinforcement, is when you start to see in the world around you a representation of that intention. At the time, I'd be out and about and I'd go to, I don't know, the grocery store, and I would see young parents, and I would just take a moment to acknowledge my part and the reinforcement coming in. And for me, it was this thing. I just do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I would just do that. Super simple. Yet I would be, and then I would start to see it just all over the place. I would start to see parents and their babies, parents and their children, fathers playing with their sons or what have you. And it just started to become something that perhaps I had not just been aware of previously. Maybe it was always there. However, now I was observing it and reinforcing it. This is a reality. Now, as we do that, then all of a sudden, our body then begins to store new information, new data. And whether we're talking about wealth, so wealth for me, again, is more than just money. It's connections, it's opportunities, it's resources. I could be out and perhaps maybe I see one of those Jeep Gladiators. Maybe I see one that's just like beautiful and I see it. So I could be driving and I could just reinforce 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Perhaps it's a matter of connection. I might see some friends who are out having fun, who are in that place of flow and enjoyment. And that could be part of what I'm looking at in terms of wealth and well being. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So, whatever that is for you, create something that acknowledges the world around you and how it can really reflect what's happening with inside. Another part that really comes into play as an exercise is in body movements. And so taking then, for example, the visualization, going into that perfect moment, all that wonderful stuff. And as soon as that's done, breathe in, breathe out, release. One of the things that I like to do is just to stand up and walk around as if I am in that state, right? And so I could go through that whole beautiful scenario and sequence and just feel really wonderful about it. And instead of it just stopping, I will stand up and I'll go for a walk outside, or I will go and do something as if I'm still in that moment. And these movements are different. I often find, at least for myself, I'm standing up taller, I'm smiling, I'm enjoying the moment more so than I might have otherwise. And so these movements and these patterns reinforcing in our very physicality, that vision for the mental body, the emotions that are now starting to readjust and recalibrate in concert with all of that helps to create an entirely new and different dynamic. All right, am I on time? Okay, I've got 4 minutes. All right, review. So here are all the different tools and techniques that we've gone through for our first part in terms of reflection. Journals are great. Using the journal to flush all of that out is going to be terrific. And again, I'll follow up with those who want it, the PDF. So you have all of this. The video I'm going to post later today to the webpage will be available for a week. And then I'm actually starting and kickstarting this program, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So you don't feel like you need to write any of this down. I'll give you the PDF. You'll have the video for a week, so you can also work through it then. Reflection note journal, write everything out, get it all out, and identify then, and I would do this, 5 minutes of my experience of 2021, journaling it all out. After that 5-minute timer goes off, then identify, well, what are those 3 words of challenge? Once you have your 3 words of challenge, technique number 2, introspection. What are those words of triumph? Scales, right? Or rather, a spectrum. On one side, it could be a matter of scarcity. On the other side, it is a matter of wealth. Identify those words of triumph because it goes straight into your aspirations. Your B statements, I would highly advise, though by no means do you have to, would be those 3 words of triumph, which then can lead to your 5 do's, the actions that are fulfillment of that, and your 10 haves. And by all means, if you want to do 3, 6, 12 as well, right? Having those 3 B's, 6 do's, 12 haves, go for it. Visualization, that perfect moment. So now we got all this information. Me driving I'm big into trucks and foraging, and the truck that I have is not a 4x4, which is why I've really been looking at the Jeep Gladiator, because I can go off-roading in these areas I haven't. So I'm going to use that as an example. I'm going and I'm driving and, off-roading, and I'm going into this place which is just beautiful and secluded, and I pop out, and whatever that moment is for that visualization of that perfect moment. Okay. So that's a visualization technique. And then we want to ground that, right? Vision craft, whatever works best for you. If it's a matter of a cool, artsy vision board, then terrific, do that. If it's just having something as a screensaver, do that. We want to reinforce that in our everyday life. Going in from vision craft, and we go into resonance. What's your jams? Get your jams, 432 hertz, the note of A. Balance. Okay, our body again holds all of these different things, and so we want to balance this out. As we're introducing this information, as we're introducing this vision, we also want to be attentive to where our body and our belief systems are as well, and go through the process of releasing a lot of that. Coherence. That can also come in through breath work. Instead of attempting to operate with that left hemisphere, we want that right hemisphere to kick in as well and have a very harmonious communication and relationship with each other. Rhythm, larger rhythms, timing, waiting for the right time. And then also that being not just a matter of the seasons, our own internal micro rhythms as well. These microcycles, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Causation. All right. So what the heck do we need to do? This is a great exercise. I would say 5 minutes, though for me, I needed 10 because there was a lot I felt needed to happen. List all of that out. And as you list all of that out, go into technique 11, allowing. So that's support that's going to come into play, whether that's the guidance, the accountability, whether that's the social support and or delegating certain things so that you can free up your own time, which gets into 11.5. What's depleting, what's renewing, what's uplifting, what's exhausting. Finally, as we have an idea of all of our actionable items, we go into embodiment. And remember that 4%. Okay, so let's go back to then as a real world tangible example, the Jeep Gladiator could start off with me just doing research on what's available, the cost, and then going from there. Maybe next week is actually reaching out and doing an email to set up a time or a call to set up a time to actually do a test drive, so on and so forth. It doesn't need to be a huge monumental thing. And often when we set the intention, right, things start to happen. And so one of the things that we want to do rather than pigeonholing how it's going to happen is allow things to happen in a natural and organic way. Reinforcing that, I see the Jeeps, I tap, tap, tap. I do a vision around the vehicle itself, and maybe I'm driving my truck, but I'm imagining the Jeep, right? And so as we go through all of these things, and I'm just using this item because it's more, I guess, easily relatable. However, we're then starting to reinforce, but then also really embody. And it's in that embodiment that things really, really start to happen. All right, so to wrap things up, 1 minute over, all good. All right, so wrap things up, then emailing the PDF after this. So these are next steps. So I'll be emailing the PDF or providing it to you for those who are interested. Replay is going to be housed on the webpage at killamal.com. I'll update all that today, so it'll be available for tomorrow all the way through next Sunday. This week and for the month of January, I'll be doing the relaxation response classes on Wednesdays at 9 with access and replay after that. So this will give you a better idea in terms of what that looks like. It's about an hour and 15-minute class altogether. I'm going to be starting next week, Wednesday. So if you want to go through each and every one of these, this is going to be a 12-week experience that actually goes through each and every one of these points each and every week. So this will be a group experience. There'll be everything from that social support to videos and guidance to more backing as well as more tools. We're going to go more intently in through the actual techniques themselves. And so if you're interested in that, by all means, either message me on the webpage or contact at killamal.com. Okay, that's it. All right, so let me turn off my screen sharing here. And okay, very good. Well, thank you one and all for everyone who has joined here now and who are joining later digitally. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But that is it for now. Love and aloha, everybody. Take care and thank you for joining. Ahui ho.